we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government, and now before this bureaucratic, oversized and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action, only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. And welcome to the hallowed halls of the University of Logic, better known as Cristiano's Conservatory, correcting convoluted conversations. This is Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, on 1170 KFAQ. This is your antidote to popular talk radio. You know, this week was the first time I watched Something with the Stars. What's the movie? Dancing with the Stars? You know, where they contest, you know, where they sing.
America's Got Talent.
America's Got Talent. Thank you. All right.
Dancing with Stars doesn't start till the fall.
That's right.
Yeah.
America's Got Talent. That's what I got confused. Well, I don't watch any one of them.
America's Got Talent. Yeah,
America's Got Talent. And I think this is the third time that I've watched this program.
Oh, okay.
And I've come to a conclusion. What kind of conclusion
have you come to, sir?
Well, that Howard Stern and I have something in common.
Really?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Well,
this is going to take a second, so please,
okay,
if you're driving, just pull over on the side, turn your engine off.
Waiting with bated breath,
right
here, Joe.
Well, you know,
you and Howard Stern are
Howard Stern and I
are alike.
Yeah, kindred spirits, as they say. Yeah, we really are. And I really have a tremendous amount of respect for Howard Stern, although he does some crazy stuff. Now, let me go back 31 years ago, I joined Toastmasters International.
Okay. Yeah.
And I wanted to become a professional speaker, which I did at the time.
Uh-huh.
And they were very, very helpful. Back in the old days when you gave a speech, there were, newbies in the audience, like any other organization. Of course, they were those people who were seasoned speakers who understood what it meant to convey a word from point A to point B and make it meaningful.
Yeah.
And I learned from some of the best speakers, I think, in America, quite frankly.
Oh.
And I belonged to the National Speakers Association for a very short period of time until I quit. No, that's a long story. But
that's another story. All right, well,
I do not endorse that program at all. Okay. But another story. But here's my point. My point is that when I became the senior statesman of my Toastmasters group, people relied on me, as I relied on them years ago, for insight on how to speak. Now, whenever someone gave a speech, you never told somebody, that was stupid, you were really bad, sit down and don't do that again.
Throw tomatoes or anything like that.
Yeah,
right?
That has never, ever happened. And I've been to meetings for over 30 years. I belong to this club. Over 30 years, that has never happened, so I can attest to that. But what I would do is that I would be very, very specific in my evaluation. For example, if a person was to give us a 5 or 10 minute speech, and the purpose of the speech was to convince us to take their point of view, to accept their point of view, that's what you looked for. Now, if I was the evaluator, I would stand up and I would talk about their speech. But the core of my evaluation was whether or not that person was successful in convincing me to take their side. Now, quite frankly, in most cases, the answer was no. And the objective could be anything.
Because people were still learning. And stuff
they're still learning. Absolutely. It's a learning exercise.
They weren't very good. They're just learning.
Or it could be just to make you laugh. And if people really didn't laugh, they didn't laugh, And that's a tough, and comedy is the toughest form of communications. You know that, Jim.
Yeah.
So I became known as the no-no guy. And as time progressed, I saw a change in society. And this change in society was that you never, ever tell anyone that they've done something incorrectly. I think I see this with children. I see this everywhere. And what was going on, and this was for years, a few years, someone would get up and give a speech. I would give an evaluation. I'll give you one. Remember Sally? She came here a couple of times.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'll give you, this is a specific, she's probably listening. She's going to kill me for this, you know. But, I mean, she's an excellent speaker. But she made a critical mistake in that she made a joke with inside of a joke, so to speak. And then she followed it by saying, I was only kidding. You know, we do that a lot. I was only kidding.
Oh,
you know?
I'm only kidding. Yeah.
And my evaluation was this. I said, Sally, it was a very effective speech. I truly enjoyed it. Don't you ever, 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 ever again apologize for what you say in front of your audience. And I sat down. Well, that club went nuts. It was as if I beat her to death, and after she was bleeding, I kicked her in the head, you know.
Yeah.
You know? And what would happen is when I would give now that was poignant. That was right to the point, exactly what she needed to do.
That was Toastmasters here.
Right here in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And my point is this, that at the end of the meeting, right before the meeting would commence, convene, someone would say, oh, by the way, Sally, I just want to let you know, I thought that was an excellent speech. In other words, we cannot tolerate even, and when I say criticism, I mean constructive criticism that helps somebody. We can't do that anymore in America. Everything's got to be la-la land. Everything's got to be cheering and yay, happy, and everyone's the best and everything.
Candy-coated.
Every damn thing is candy-coated, right?
Yeah.
Now, let me say, I spoke professionally for about 10 years. I had a regular job, but I would travel all over the place as well. And let me tell you something. I would say a majority of those speeches really sucked. It took me a long time to realize what I was doing. It took a long time and a lot of hard work and a lot of embarrassment, something that I do not suggest anyone go through. Now, let's go to America's Got Talent. What do you see? What do you hear? A person comes on stage, you hear screaming. I mean, not an applause, but screaming and yelling like this person. Like it's the second coming, you know? And it's just unbelievable, right?
Well, according to it is,
The person says 2 words, sings 2 words, and they start screaming and yelling, and it's so annoying you can't even enjoy the person singing. Right? Now, that's the good part. Here's the bad part, and this is where Howard Stern and I are on the same page. When they go around asking for an evaluation, what do you hear from 3 of the 4 constantly?
You did a great job. Boy.
Wow.
You're really great.
You're the greatest person ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you hear.
You're going to go on.
You touched me.
Yeah. That was, even better.
Again.
Even better, that was awesome, man. Which is my favorite.
Your favorite word, yeah.
And then Howard Stern, not all the time, I mean, maybe 1 out of every 5 people or something like that. And again, I've only watched this program 3 times in my life, so I can't talk for all the programs. And he would say something like, he said, John, you're a very talented person. You have a very unique act. But what I didn't see the integration of your talent in that act. And I think if you put those 2 together, you would have something very powerful. And what do you think would happen? He would get boos, right? He would get boos. He went through.
Well, like American Idol used to
be. You remember, when that guy was with, who was the guy that was American Idol that did the same thing?
Simon.
Oh, people would just, woo.
Yeah, but he told it like it was.
He did. He told it like it was.
Well, but the thing is, you're not being negative. And now, if you said, man, you suck, you're stupid, that's of no help, right? And I went through that for over 30 years until one day at Toastmasters, I gave an evaluation, an in-depth evaluation. In fact, one guy did write me a letter. One guy wrote me a letter, and he said, you are the true master. I'm not kidding you. He wrote me a letter. He said, Joe, he said, that was the most in-depth, constructive critique of any speech I have ever heard. You are truly the man. Never forget that I didn't say the thing.
I'm curious, Joe, when you were coming up in the speaking, as a young man, was it the protocol at that time to actually be criticized, constructive criticism?
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah, when you start,
that's the whole
how you
point.
learn.
And it's just over time, it's just graded into this mushy.
Yeah, it's degraded to this. Yeah, and what they would do is after I would give a presentation, someone would stand up and say, Kevin, I thought you did a good job. Well, in other words, discrediting what I did, just like American Idol. But that speaks to society today. My point is that speaks to society. That's what really bothers me, is that we cannot
face the truth. We cannot face the truth.
And when the truth is helpful, we can't accept it. What can we do? How do we move from where we are today, even one step, even 1 centimeter from where we are now? We can't, because if you do, you are ostracized. Kevin, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. So the real question is, if we are afraid of the truth, could the answer be that we're becoming a nation of lies?
Why not?
Very good.
That's what it seems like to me.
You are absolutely correct. We won't call them liars. Now, I don't call
politically correct.
That's right. I would not call the people who were at that meeting liars. But if they stand up and go, but I thought that was awesome, and they sit down, and I hear the word awesome, and I shake. In fact, some of my friends call, and they just say awesome, and they hang up on me because they and I hate them all. I want you to know that. I hate every one of them, But we cannot face, but when you extend this out, when you hear something on the news, and it's a lot of bull, and someone comes out with what really happened, we cannot accept it. And our whole life becomes a lie. We cannot build from here. We cannot progress from here. And we're lucky to get a job selling ties at a place in the mall, and that's about all we can do, because we cannot think after that. Don't go away. We have more of this program. Let's take a quick break. And if you send me email, make sure you only say nice words like I'm awesome.
Yeah,
all right. I don't want any criticism. Just want to hear how wonderful I am.
I wanted to make a comment about that. That philosophy, though, that you're talking about, candy coating what's going on with politics, it goes on in the workplace too.
Absolutely.
You go to meetings, you hear a bunch of bull dinky from the leader, and you think, can I express myself? No, because you're a bad egg.
And that's how it normally is.
Yeah.
I was once transferred when I worked for Royal Dutch Shell, and they put me in charge of a whole facility. I mean, the physical facility was mine. Not on me. What a bigger job, Yeah. Now, we had one little problem. I mean, I couldn't nail one board to another. And I think they did that because this is guaranteed failure. We can get rid of this bum. I always thought that. And what I did is I went down to the engineering department where all the engineers worked, and there was a supervisor of engineering, a supervisor of construction, all these guys. I knew blueprints and all this other stuff. And I sat on top of a five drawer file cabinet. I forget, big black one. Standing up. And I propped myself up. That's been the old days when I was able to jump up that far. And I stood up there, and I got the whole department together, and I looked at them. And of course, they all had their arms crossed, staring at me. You know the typical,
Yeah, what are you going to show me?
What do you think you could do for me, man?
Yeah.
And they're all looking at each other for convenience. Confirmation, right?
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll bet you guys think that I know very little about running this facility. And they didn't say a word. They just looked at each other and smiled like, yeah. I said, well, you're wrong. Every one of you are wrong. You see, I know absolutely nothing about operating this facility. and they were shocked. I'll never forget this. And I said, but what I could do for you, very few people can do. Because I care about this place. I care about the people who work in this place, and that means you. Now, you have your job. Don't know what it is. Don't know what you do. Don't show me. It confuses me. I'm not that smart. Just do it. Every single person in that department was given an upgrade in pay, a great upgrade in pay before I left. Every one of them. And I'm just showing you that, you know, you don't have to say, look how smart I am. You know, we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to say, hey, I don't know this. I mean, I don't understand this. Explain this to me. And we listen to talk radio, and half talk radio is just garbage and crap, and just, I find it annoying. And then when someone says something poignant, something corrective, something that we should think about, what happens? The person's negative. We have no thought process in America anymore. You know, when I was young, one of my favorite game was Monopoly. I loved Monopoly.
Still very popular.
I love
today.
Monopoly. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, I was never good at it, but there's a story that I read while I was in the hospital. And what was interesting about this, and I don't have it with me, it got fumbled with all the papers and whatever and got thrown away.
And the bills.
So if the person who wrote the story is listening in, please call in and correct me, you know. So this is not original. There was this young boy who was introduced to Monopoly by his grandmother. And she taught him how to play. And learning that game, he learned two things. The way to wealth was the possession of property, acquisition of property, right, and owning the means of production. He learned that just, you know, as a little kid, 8-year-old kid. And, of course, he wasn't very good at it, and his grandmother would beat him, and he started playing his friends. His friend would beat him. And he played every single day. From the time he got up to the time he went to bed, he played that game Monopoly. And toward the end of the summer, he played his grandmother, and he won.
That's my hero.
And she said, you've learned very well. You learned how to play the game. She said, but now comes the real lesson. All the pieces go back into the box. Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter who wins, who loses, and who draws. When the game is over, all the $1 bills face the same direction. You know, you've seen that, right?
Yes, sir.
They all go back into the box. The $5 bills. Mine was a little choo-choo train. I used to like the choo-choo train.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I used to like to buy the boardwalk and whatever. And I used to like to possess as much as I could. You know, I was never that successful.
St. James Place.
Yeah, St. James Place. Broadway was the big place, right?
Boardwalk.
Right.
Marvin Gardens. Always
Marvin Gardens.
That was a good one. The yellow one.
Memories
No,
of
but
Monopoly.
I don't want to joke too much about this because I don't want to lose the meaning of it. And the meaning of it is that no matter what we do in life, we can play that game. Now, that transcends to everything that we do. If you become president of the United States, or don't become president, it's immaterial. It's what you do with your life. If you become president of the United States and make people's life miserable and enrich yourself, you've lost that game of Monopoly. Because when your time is up, when the game is over, the pieces go back into the box in the exact same place you found them.
I think I need to say amen on that one.
Definitely.
So when you think about this, everything that we do, the pieces always go back into. So now there are people who start big companies and become billionaires. There's Steve Jobs and whatever. Now Steve Jobs can take that position and make thousands, tens of thousands of people's lives miserable. Or he could take what he learned and transfer it to the people who he hires, creates wealth for everyone, improves the lives of everyone. So not just Steve Jobs becomes wealthy and successful, but tens of thousands of people. Because the tens of thousands of people, when the game is over, all their pieces are going to go back into the box.
Well, it's essentially what Bill Gates did with Microsoft.
With Microsoft, right. And there are many examples. So when we hear from government about the the people who have money, the bad people, when you hear about all from politicians about all the bad people out there, really what they're trying to do is divert their attention from them, what they are doing. They enrich no one. They just take money from one person, give it to the other, but they skim most off the top for themselves first. That's why I have a difficult time with the political parties, with our political system, and with those criminals that are in office. Because none of them play the game where anyone else could win. They want to win. Only they want to win. And when their time is up, their pieces go back into the box like everyone else. And they don't want to realize that. And it really gets me angry. What difference does it make? Look at the situation we have in Israel with Hamas right now. You know, come on, folks. Historically, I know something about that, and we don't have enough time. I can spend the whole program on it. But you know, these poor Palestinian people were living with the Palestinian Jews prior to 1948. Yes, was there tension? You bet there was tension, but they were able to work it out person by person, mosque by mosque, you know, synagogue by synagogue. They were able to work it out, and they were working it out. Mm-hmm. And prior to the British, it was a British mandate, whatever that's supposed to mean. Can you imagine? This is all my property because of a British mandate. Oh, just give me that. Hey, here's a mandate. Don't touch this property. It's all mine. It's a mandate.
Well, the Queen said so.
Yeah, the Queen gave it to him, right. Yeah. You know, she signed a piece of paper or stuff like that, yeah. And bingo. And all of a sudden, because there was a British mandate, which no one really truly can understand legally what that meant, they were able to take land from the Palestinian people or from a group of people, most of which wanted to be Palestinian Jews, Palestinian Christians, Palestinian whatever, you know. Right. Absolutely. Every single one of them, that's the way they wanted it to be. But they knew that Palestine was a bottomless pit. There was nothing for Britain, right? And they got soaked by those people called the Zionists, who wanted their own state and given their own state. But when they took it, when they were given their own state, they had to take it from someone else. Now we go back to the monopoly game. Mm-hmm. All right? What they did is they reached over the board and they said, oh, you have buildings in Marvin Gardens. They're now mine. And folks, I'll tell you this situation will never be resolved. Never in a million, I say give a million years, it will never be resolved. And as Gerald Celente screams about all the time, and I cannot disagree with him on this one, will be the cause of World War III. Only because the people in Israel, the Zionists in Israel, didn't understand the game of Monopoly. They didn't understand that there were two parts to that game. There was playing the game, having a choice of making life miserable for people or uplifting people. And that no matter what course of action they took, all the pieces wound back into the box. Let's take a break. The second half of our program, we're pleased to have James Perloff, the author of Shadows of Power, an expose of private influence on American foreign policy that has sold over 100,000 copies, and 2 books about the evidence against Darwin's theory of evolution, including Tornado in a Junkyard. He wrote for the New American magazine for nearly 3 decades. His new book, Truth is a Lonely Warrior, is a comprehensive look at the satanic drive for world government. His website is jamesperloff.com. James, you're on the air.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the air, Joe.
Oh, wonderful having you. Let me be. How honest could I be with you?
Well, we're on the air. America needs honesty right now.
Okay. I typically do not have people on the show that have a religious message. You are an exception, because my staff said, you've got to have this guy on. They looked at your work, and they truly enjoyed it, and they said, no, Joe, you got to make an exception. And the only reason why I say that is that I get too much flack from, people writing me belief systems, and I have to answer all these emails that I can't answer in the first place. So, but I don't take offense to that, but I'm awfully glad that you're here. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how did you wind up writing this book, Truth as a Lonely Warrior? What led up to that?
Well, I wrote this book, The Shadows of Power, in the 1980s. It was about the Council on Foreign Relations, which is basically the bridge of influence between the rich, the multinationals, the big banks, and the American government. It's how they supply personnel to presidential cabinets, whether they're Democratic or Republican. And I drew that whole history going back to the Council was founded in 1919. It was a best-selling book. I get a lot of PowerPoints. People ask for updates. I got involved in the creation evolution debate quite heavily, but after 9/11, I became alert to the fact that our country is in serious trouble, and I decided to revisit. It's important to revisit this venue of political history. So, Truth as a Lonely Warrior is. I'm not going to give people a whole rundown, but just give me a moment here.
Sure.
The book deals with the false flags. It starts out by dealing with the false flags from the Maine to the non-existent WMDs for Iraq. The Maine, of course, the ship that brought us into the Spanish-American War. I talk about the powers that be, the Council on Foreign Relations, how presidents are pre-selected before the conventions take place. I have a chapter on the Fed and its debauching of our currency, all this fiat money. I describe how this cartel has run America from behind the scenes, designing everything from the World Bank to the Marshall Plan. I have a chapter on Vietnam, the chapter on the plan to turn the NAFTA into a North American Union, the same way they turned the common market into the EU and Europe. I have a chapter on mass media control, a chapter on secret societies, on the extension of this cabal beyond the Council on Foreign Relations to the international networking of the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral Commission, a chapter on environmentalism, which is a pretext for control, a chapter on Zionism, one on 9/11, the control of the arts, a chapter on the war on faith, a chapter on population control, vaccines, weather control, chemtrails is all there. It's a book designed to be given to someone who maybe scoffs at you, calls you a conspiracy theorist, with documentation, comprehensive, but without too many words, hopefully. It's not a tome like Quigley's Tragedy and Hope. It's about 300 pages long. Something you can give to people to give credibility to our position, because, in the truth, we call the truth movement, if you give people just one piece of the puzzle, like you just talk about 9/11,
right,
how there was government involvement, there was suspicion of government involvement, it doesn't make sense. People say, well, why would our own government do that? You have to give them the entire picture. You have to show them the whole crossword puzzle, because one piece of a crossword puzzle by itself doesn't make any sense. But when you fit that crossword puzzle piece into the entire picture, you see the whole picture, and now that piece makes sense. And that's what I've tried to do with this book. It's a comprehensive look at what's been taking America down for the last century or two.
Wow, that must have been some undertaking.
Yeah.
Jeez, yeah, it's amazing. 300 pages, wow.
No, I wrote in a couple of days.
Thanks for making me feel worse than I already do,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, now, there must have been an influencing power of sorts, or something which initiated all of this. And in your own words, what was that thing?
Well,
event?
You talk about religious people. I'm not one of those guys who says God talks to me, right? But once about every 10 years, there'll be something that'll happen like this. And it happened back in the late 1970s. I saw a girl. She's reading a book by Gary Allen called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. And something told me I had to get that book. This one, something that happened so I went to a bookstore, found it, and that book enlightened me. For the first time, I saw that history had a pattern, that history made sense, that there were the distinct unfolding of events according to an agenda. And eventually, I was inspired to write a book of my own. That became The Shadows of Power. That was pre-internet. Didn't have a lot of the tools we can so easily access information the way we do today. But that was the initiation for me. And I would have to say that the hand of God on me to do that. It's all about telling the truth. And that really, we can talk about religion, but, when you're telling the truth, you're close to God, because God is a God of truth. He's the creator of the universe. He respects the truth. And
Right.
It's not a denominational thing or anything like that.
Yeah, I heard a scientist when he was asked. He's on TV once in a while. He's a great scientist. I don't remember his name, unfortunately, but he talks about the universe and whatever. And they asked him about God, and he said, but he said from my perspective, he said, being the science and see what I see, he said, to me, God is order. And it made perfect sense. He says, it made order. He said, because if there was no God, he said, all these planets would be hitting with one another. And he said, God is order. He said, and I guess the flip side to that is that we humans are the disorder.
Yeah.
And so we have to get closer to whatever your definition of God is.
Yeah.
And I don't subscribe to any particular religion for this program. I'm just saying whatever that description is makes you closer to God, puts you more in order. You hear the term, Jim, I'm one with the cosmos. You ever hear that expression? Yeah. And this is what the guy was saying, Now, tell me, do you make any predictions as a result of everything that you've studied, you've researched? Can you tell us what is going on now from your perspective, and where do you think we're going?
Well, we're headed the way we have been headed. If you look at the trend of the world wars, the First World War was used to bring about the First World Government, which was the League of Nations, which failed. The Second World War was designed. It brought about the United Nations, and we see more and more globalization. We see not only the countries of Europe being united into the EU and NAFTA here with a push for a North American Union. They're trying to consolidate religions through the ecumenical movement. And we see business mergers with multinational corporations growing larger and larger and fewer in number as they merge together. It's about consolidation. It's about control. We're headed towards a one world government. And one thing I think we can actually predict is it would be a tyranny if it was formed. And this goes back to the principles of the Founding Fathers, who knew you don't concentrate all power in a king or a president. You have checks and balances. So they gave us an executive, but they gave us, and you deal with a lot of the local legislative issues and electoral issues
right.
there in Oklahoma, but they give us a legislature with a check and a balance between the House and the Senate. They give us a judiciary branch to put a check on them, and the states in the original 10th Amendment understanding of the Founding Fathers would have put a check on the whole federal government. So it's about checks and balances. But if you got one government ruling the whole world, which is what a third world war might bring about, then you would have unrestrained tyranny. In the old days of the Iron Curtain, you could escape over the Berlin Wall to freedom. But if you have a one world government where can you escape? On either side of the wall, it would be the socialist one world government running it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you had an opportunity to listen in on the first half of my program, but the big problem that what I discuss is that the fact that the American mentality doesn't have the capacity to think through this.
And that's what they've designed the educational system to do, and all
that's
this
right.
dumbed down television. They don't want people thinking too hard. They'd rather just have them sitting back and watching spectator sports, and
exactly.
football all day and not thinking about what's going on. But it really does take critical analysis. You have to work out a problem, you've got to think. And one of the problems we're facing is that the media has lied to us about a great many things, and echoing what the government has told us. And we do have to think and analyze and see the pattern, just the way a scientist would do in performing an experiment, or the way a district attorney would as a better example, really a district attorney or police detective putting together a crime from the facts to determine exactly what happened when that crime took place. And there are crimes taking place within the government, and that's including governments on an international scale. Yeah,
but when the governments commit a crime, and this is probably going on minute by minute. I mean, if we be honest about it, I mean, everything they do is somewhat criminal in a sense. And I use the term criminality in a very broad scope, not just the guy with the mask on in the middle of the night holding a little lady up going to the shopping center. I'm talking about what they are doing is absolutely criminal.
Unconscionable.
It's unconscionable.
It really is.
And it hurts everyone. They know it. And what scares me, they're the only ones that are thinking.
Criminally. And you and me and the people are listening to your show, but you're right. Actually, Joe, I think there are more people thinking than we realize, because I think the mass media tries to create this impression that everybody is sheeple. But where I go, I talk to people sometimes, and I start talking to the Federal Reserve, and they say, "Oh, yeah, I know about the Federal Reserve," and there's more people waking up than I think we are giving credit for by the mass media.
Well, you know what, Jim, I just hope you're right, because I find this very discouraging, and I would love to see more people taking a more active role in every way, shape, or form, and save writing to your congressman. That's not going to do any good. I mean, take a more active role in things. Now, where do you think our next hot spot is, and what do you think the outcome will be?
Well, I'm not sure what they're up to right now in Gaza and the Ukraine, but either they're trying to mold the world. They seem like they're trying to install puppet regimes, like this one they put into Ukraine. And last year they wanted airstrikes in Syria, and clearly they wanted to replace Assad with a puppet. They were proposing a sort of a Zionist puppet to replace Gaddafi after he was overthrown. All these so-called popular uprisings that are really backed by the West and by the big banks over here. Either they're trying to mold the world in preparation for this new world order, or maybe they're trying to stir up a world war because they know how catalytic that can be to creating things. Maybe they think to create a world currency and a global euro. They need just as the World War II created the World Bank and IMF. Maybe they're looking to create a hot conflict now across the globe, or maybe they're just looking for something smaller just to get new puppets in place. I don't know, but they're definitely moving in a uniform direction, and it's satanic, and it's towards consolidation, it's towards socialism, and the advancement of Zionism.
Well, don't you, in a sense, do you see the alliances of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa, such as those, and the Development Bank, which is, I think, 43 countries, all of whom are working financially outside of the IMF and the World Bank. In other words, the Western. And do you see the emergence of a new banking system, new trade around the world? Is that not I know it sounds almost hypocritical, but almost a positive step that would refrain the United States from taking any further action?
Yes, it's a very good question. And, of course, the Federal Reserve here has been creating trillions of dollars in fiat currency. And the only reason we do have bad inflation in this country, the government tries to tell us it's about 2%. It's really running about 9% because the government understates the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. They keep retweaking the way they figure that out. But because the dollar is the petrodollars, and it's the dollar is the world's reserve currency, all the other countries are holding our dollars, and as the dollar is devalued by this fiat manufacturing of almost like counterfeit cash by the banksters, which they distribute to bail out Wall Street and so forth. Other countries are feeling that, and they're tired of it, and so they want to go on an alternative currency to put a stop to the economic decline they're feeling from the devaluation of the dollar. And that may be what some of this is about, maybe the threats towards Putin. They want to get somebody, just like the new Poroshenko in Ukraine, he's now friendly to the IMF. Maybe they're trying to pressure Russia into replacing Putin with someone who will stay on the dollar system with Russia. That's a possibility. But, without us sitting in on these Bilderberger-type meetings ourselves, and these secret meetings, we don't know what's going on in their heads, and we don't know what their agenda is. We're going to look at their actions and try the best we can to try and logically interpret what their end game is.
It seems like whatever they're doing, it's escalating quickly. It seems like on every front, you just see things popping up everywhere. Whether it's the borders overrunning, whether it's in the United States, whether it's the
immigration
Crimean War, the immigration situation, the Crimean War, not Crimean War, but the war over there in
Ukraine. Yeah.
Ukraine, yeah. And then you also see the financial situation falling apart, the BRICS situation. It looks like there's now going to be a conflict, a currency war. It's just like they're pouring, gasoline on the flames, and I think they're just promoting chaos.
Order out of chaos.
They're going to bring order out of chaos, or what their perceived order might be. Maybe that's the game plan. That's the end game.
And honestly, I don't see them stopping BRICS anytime soon, because in 2009 and 2008, China had a meeting with Australia to switch from the dollar with doing bilateral trading. And then within year 2010, China did a meeting with Russia. And then just 2 years ago, China had a meeting with Japan. They're moving their pieces on the board real quick.
Well, the U.S. obviously is losing. Now, whether or not that's planned, I mean, this is the way they want it to be. We don't know.
We don't know.
But people who are awake start protecting themselves in small ways, in any way that they can. Let me ask you, here's the unfair question of the week. Are you ready for it, Jim?
I'll try.
Okay, what do you think of Hillary Clinton's chances of getting in?
As president?
Yes.
They can make anybody president. They can make you and me president. Jimmy Carter was only favored by 4% of registered Democrats 7 months before the Democratic Convention of 76. And Wendell Willkie, who'd been a registered Democrat, was only favored by 3% of Republicans. I think it was 8 weeks before the 1940 Republican Convention, but it's just a matter of mass media magic. You all of a sudden put the guy's picture on Newsweek and Time and have him on all the radio and TV networks, and he's plastered and on all those covers. And the Wall Street Journal says he's the best candidate, and all of a sudden he becomes the president. So they can make Hillary president if they wanted to.
They can make her president.
That's pretty spooky.
That's a good answer.
That's a very good answer.
Yep. Who would you favor? Do you have someone that you think truly qualifies, and you do not have to compromise any of your own principles by voting for this person? I don't have one, by the way, so I really don't. But
of course, there's never going to be a perfect candidate, but I've certainly liked Ron Paul. I certainly liked his constitutionality, his desire to keep us out of foreign wars, and his wisdom regarding the Federal Reserve. I would, if there was a choice between him and the other mainstream frontrunners, I'd certainly favor him for president.
Yeah, me too.
Did you say Rand or Ron?
I said Ron Paul.
Ron Paul. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. I'm with you.
The jury's still out on Rand, I think.
Well, no. Rand Paul is, now he's
neocon lately. Yeah.
He is really touting the Israeli side of the conflict and all this, and I don't know where he's getting his information or why he's doing that, but maybe he's doing it for the Jewish vote or something like that, but it just annoyed the hell out of me. I don't think he's heard the term no foreign entanglements, So now in your book, you talk about the Freemasons. Why do you bring them up?
Only to give a more complete picture, obviously, well over 95% of all Freemasons in America are not involved in anything sinister. My own grandfather was a Freemason. My mother was in the Eastern Star. But secret societies have been a part of this. And if you look at the history of revolutions in Europe, the Freemasons themselves, we're talking about Grand Orient Freemasonry, were deeply involved in the French Revolution, the Mazzini revolutions in Italy, and the revolution that overthrew the King of Portugal in 1910. They were reputed to be behind the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. And secret societies have been useful to these people because when people take this oath, I think there's one reason why, just for example, here in America, we don't need a revolution. Well, maybe we don't need a revolution, but, our revolution obviously happened in the 1770s and 80s. But if you take a look, for example, at the Supreme Court, which has overridden the Constitution so many times, was a Freemason Supreme Court justices like Hugo Black, William O. Douglas, Earl Warren, Thurgood Marshall, Potter Stewart were all Freemasons, and they were they were changing the Constitution in ways that really subverted our liberties. And I believe that one reason for that is because, very possibly, and I don't know because I'm not in on their secret communications, but I believe that their oath of loyalty to a secret society, in this case, may have overridden their oath to the Constitution. Because we think, well, people, that's their highest oath, but some people sometimes owe their privileged positions to their membership in secret societies, and I think we shouldn't overlook them. And again, I'm not getting down on Freemasons in general, but if you do talk to people who have researched this, and I've even met some people like this, that at the very upper levels, in certain strains of Freemasonry, there is Lucifer worship. And I know that will be hotly contested by others, but I've even met a Freemason who talked about how he carved the image of Satan in the eyes of a statue of Mary, and he boasted how the Catholics would now bow before Mary and be worshiping Satan when they did that. So I know that there's an element of that, even though it's not known to the main membership. But I felt that it was important to at least bring that part, that is a part of this whole complex we're looking at, and the development of the New World Order. It certainly played an important role in its history.
Okay, so do you think there is a connection between the Freemasons and the Illuminati and that sort of thing, like in terms of the Bilderbergs and the military complex as well, or is that like a completely separate battlefront, for lack of a better term?
Well, you could go all the way back to John Robison's book, Proof of the Conspiracy, in 1798, when he talked there about how the Illuminati had taken over the lodges there in Europe, and you see how the Illuminati plan to overthrow the governments has actually been fulfilled. They talked about overthrowing the governments and religions, and that's all been done. The Christianity is basically dead in England, in Europe, and the monarchies are all gone, or they're reduced to figureheads, and you've had a complete restructuring of the political framework there. And there's no doubt in my mind that the Illuminati played a great role in that, often by employing Freemasons whose oath of secrecy made them very useful to carry that out. And I'm sure that is still going on today. And the Supreme Court was an example I was just giving of how that happens even today in modern America.
Yeah, in a free society, I don't think there's any room for secret societies. You know, I don't know why anybody would join them.
But they're going to happen.
Oh, they're going to be there. But there's no place in when you have freedom of speech and you have a free society, there really isn't any place for secret societies. Right. It's a bad thing, and no one should join them.
Yeah, it's always dangerous to swear allegiance to something you don't understand, where there are these upper levels and you don't know what they consist of, and the oaths are quite. For example, the first Mason's oath, first degree Mason's oath, is something like this. I think it varies from the lodges to one lodge to another, but it's if I should, in the very least degree, violate my oath, may my head be cut off, my heart, my teeth, and my entrails be torn out and thrown into the sea, and may my body be burnt and the ashes cast to the winds, so that nothing may remain of me or my thoughts among men or among my brother Masons. So you can see how people who join a society where as they pass on to the new levels are taking these blood oaths with great threats attached to them, not to say that here in America anything is happening like happened to Morgan back in, 1826 or something, when the Masons killed him for revealing the secrets. I'm not saying that would happen to a Mason here in America, but there's a danger to swearing this, and then when people get privileges as a result of membership, maybe they get a promotion, they get a job because they're a member, and now they feel they owe something, and then their due bill comes, and now they have to do something that's maybe morally repugnant to them. And I'm not saying that happens necessarily, and the average, certainly wouldn't happen to the average American Freemason, but I think at the upper levels, in some of these other oath-bound secret societies like Skull and Bones, you certainly see some of that taking place.
Jim, this is fascinating. I wish we had another 2 or 3 hours. We have about another 45 seconds to go before we get cut off the air with a hard break. So allow me to give you the 45 seconds to promote your book, tell everyone who you are, where they can get the book, and why they should read it, okay?
Okay. Again, this is the book is called Truth is a Lonely Warrior. It is a comprehensive look at this entire behind-the-scenes maneuvering of our government towards the New World Order in all of its aspects. Freemasonry is just one of them. The book is available through Amazon in both Kindle and paperback. You can get it at your local bookstore, and my website is jamesperloff.com. That's Perloff. Again, I'm the author of The Shadows of Power, and I'm sure majority of your listeners do know me from that earlier book.
Okay, James, thank you so much for being on our program, and I hope you will accept our invitation to possibly return to our program at a later date.
Gladly and willingly, and thank you so much, Joe and Gil.
Thank you very much, James. Folks, this is the end of tonight's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. Folks, you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away, or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Also, remember to support those who support this program, as they are helping preserve your freedom. With that, until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio on 1170 KFAQ. Stay well, stay tuned.